Some lives burn brightest when they refuse to be anything other than exactly what they are. Anne Heche never apologized for that. Bob Marley turned suffering into a frequency the whole world could tune into. Ray Stevenson spent a career making every role feel inevitable, a quiet mastery most audiences felt before they could name it. Leslie Jordan proved that joy, delivered with perfect timing, is its own form of genius. Tina Turner rebuilt herself from nothing, not once, but completely, and then made the whole world watch her fly. She is the blueprint for what it means to reclaim your own story. Val Kilmer chased something in every performance that most people wouldn't even know how to look for. There is an image most people carry of Oprah Winfrey. She is warm light on a television screen. She is the woman leaning forward in her chair, eyes locked on a guest, making them feel, in front of millions, that they are the only person in the room. She is the book club and the $1 billion and the you get a car. She is aspiration made flesh. But the image, as images always do, costs something. And what Oprah paid to build it, sustain it, and ultimately transcend it is the story most people never fully see. She was born on January 29, 1954, in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, to a teenage mother, Vernita Lee, who was unmarried and poor. The name on the birth certificate was meant to be Orpah, a biblical figure from the Book of Ruth, but a clerical error or a neighbor's pronunciation turned it into Oprah, and it stuck. Her early years were spent on her grandmother Hattie Mae's farm, without running water or reliable heat. Her grandmother taught her to read before she was 3. That was the first gift and the first burden. She was too smart for the world she was born into, and she would spend decades outrunning it. She was shuttled between her grandmother, her mother in Milwaukee, and eventually her father, Vernon Winfrey, in Nashville. The instability left marks. In Milwaukee, between the ages of 9 and 13, she was sexually abused by a cousin, an uncle, and a family friend, a fact she would not disclose publicly for decades, and when she finally did, on her own show, in 1986, the studio went silent. The audience hadn't expected that. Neither, she later admitted, had she entirely planned it. It came out because another guest was speaking, and something in her body recognized the truth and sent it to her mouth before her mind could stop it. That was the paradox of Oprah's public self. She built it on transparency, but transparency at that scale is also a kind of armor. She could confess on television because the lights and the cameras and the applause created a container that private life never offered. At 13, she ran away. She became pregnant at 14. The baby boy was born prematurely and died shortly after birth. She rarely speaks about him. That grief is one of the few things she has never fully converted into a teachable moment for an audience. Some wounds she kept. Her father in Nashville gave her structure, rules, curfews, books, a required book report every week. It was discipline she hadn't had and perhaps didn't want, but it redirected her. She won a speech contest that earned her a full scholarship to Tennessee State University. She was hired by a Nashville radio station while still in high school. She was 19 when she became the co-anchor of Nashville's evening news, the youngest and the first black woman to hold the position at WTVF-TV. TV. The camera, it turned out, did not merely like her, it trusted her. But trust is not the same as power, and for years those were separate things. She moved to Baltimore in 1976 to co-host a morning talk show called People Are Talking. Her producers at WJZ-TV had initially tried to reshape her, soften her hair, change her nose, retrain her voice. She failed an audition for a network job because she was deemed too emotionally involved in her stories. She cried at them. She felt them. The industry told her that was a defect. She would eventually make it the entire architecture of her brand. In 1983, she moved to Chicago to host a low-rated morning show called AM Chicago. Within a month, ratings had turned. Within a year, the show was the highest-rated talk program in Chicago. In 1986, it was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show and syndicated nationally. By 1987, it was the #1 talk show in America. But here is the thing about the image those years produced. It looked effortless. She appeared on screen full of warmth and energy, and audiences assumed she arrived that way. What they didn't see was the obsessive preparation, the production meetings, the way she consumed every detail of every guest's story before sitting across from them. They didn't see the wait cycles. She has spoken publicly about her lifelong, agonizing relationship with food, about eating compulsively, about using food as sedation for anxiety and pain she couldn't name. In 1988, she pulled a wagon of fat onto her stage to represent the 67 pounds she had lost. The audience cheered. She admitted later she regained the weight before the year was over. That image, triumphant, thin, holding the fat in a wagon, became one of the most watched moments in daytime television. It also became for her a symbol of something unresolved. The gap between the story she performed and the body she actually lived in. The private cost of the public image was not always dramatic. Sometimes it was simply relentless. She gave 4 to 5 shows per week for 25 years. She did not have children, a choice she has framed as deliberate. She understood early that the career she wanted and a child's actual needs were incompatible, and she chose not to subject a child to that math. She has been in a relationship with Stedman Graham since 1986. They got engaged in 1992 and never married. She has said the decision not to marry preserved the relationship. She has been frank that she is, by temperament, a woman who needs control of her environment. And marriage, real marriage, not the ceremony, but the daily negotiation of 2 lives, would have cost her something she wasn't willing to give. She was also, in those years, navigating something her audience only glimpsed at the edges. What it meant to be a black woman building institutional power in white America. In 1986, she founded Harpo Productions, Oprah spelled backward, becoming only the 3rd woman in American history to own her own production studio, after Mary Pickford and Lucille Ball. The studio was not a vanity project. It was an act of structural self-preservation. She had watched what happened to black talent when the contracts ran out and the networks held the rights. She decided she would own her show, her image, her archive, and her future. She was not naive about what she represented or what it cost her to be palatable to the broadest possible audience. She navigated race carefully. Publicly, she almost never made her blackness the explicit subject of her show, because she understood that the moment she became the black talk show host, she would lose half the dial. Critics noted this. Some called it compromise. Some called it calculation. She has said it was survival, and that survival at that scale required her to build a room large enough to hold everyone before she could do anything inside it. The philanthropy, the school in South Africa, the political endorsement that helped change the course of a presidential election, none of that was possible without the room. The room required the image. The image required decades of discipline, self-erasure, and strategic warmth that was absolutely real, but was also always edited. The presidential endorsement deserves its own moment. In 2007, she endorsed Barack Obama for the Democratic nomination. The first time in her career, she had used her platform for an explicit political choice. The backlash was immediate and significant. She lost viewers. Advertisers were nervous. Economists later estimated her endorsement may have delivered over 1 million votes. The act was bold, and the cost was real, and she did it anyway. It was, in retrospect, the moment the image cracked slightly open to show the person underneath. Someone with convictions that occasionally outweighed the ratings. In 2011, after 25 years, the Oprah Winfrey Show ended. The finale drew 33 million viewers. She walked onto that stage alone and spoke without notes for an hour. No guests, no surprises, no giveaways. Just her voice and a room that would never be that room again. She has said ending the show was terrifying, that the show had been her identity for so long that stepping off was like stepping off a map. What came after is its own chapter. OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, launched in 2011 and was, by almost any measure, a difficult beginning. The ratings were low. The press was brutal. There were quiet reports of internal dysfunction, executive changes, budget pressures. For the first time in decades, the Oprah narrative was not working. She was not the underdog anyone could root for anymore. She was the institution, and institutions fail differently than people do. She responded the way she has always responded to genuine crisis. She got personal. She went back on camera. She did the interviews herself. She brought in Tyler Perry, whose audience was loyal and underserved. And she gave him a home on the network. She greenlit Iyanla, Fix My Life, and Super Soul Sunday, and began rebuilding OWN around the idea that had always worked for her. The conviction that ordinary people's interior lives are worth serious attention. By 2013, the network was profitable. By 2015, it was one of the fastest-growing cable networks among women. The comeback did not get the coverage the stumble had received. It rarely does. She has also, in recent years, moved through the culture in ways that are harder to categorize. Her performance in The Butler in 2013 reminded audiences she could act, really act, not just host. Her 2018 Golden Globes speech ignited immediate and serious speculation about a presidential run, which she publicly declined. Her 2021 interview with Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, drew an audience of 17 million in the United States alone, and became one of the most discussed television events of the decade. A reminder that when Oprah decides something is important enough to put her name on, the world still watches. She has spoken more openly in recent years about the weight of being Oprah, not the person, but the brand. About the loneliness of being a symbol. About therapy. About the ongoing, daily work of separating who she is from what she has built. She has talked about her relationship with food in terms that are no longer triumphant. No wagons, no before and after, but honest in a way that is harder to watch. She has discussed the GLP-1 medications she uses to manage her weight. She named it plainly, without apology, and took the criticism that followed without flinching. What the image never fully captured, what images almost never can, is the cost of consistency. 25 years of daily television, decades of being someone else's comfort. The discipline required to be present, emotionally available, and apparently inexhaustible, day after day, year after year, while carrying the private knowledge that you are terrified, or grieving, or sick of yourself, or simply tired. The image of Oprah Winfrey is one of the most durable in American cultural history. But durability is not the same as ease. It is labor. It is a choice made every morning to show up as a version of yourself that the world needs, even when what you need is something quieter. She is still here, still producing, still building, still speaking. The school she founded in South Africa, the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls, has graduated hundreds of young women who now hold advanced degrees. The philanthropic work continues. The media ecosystem she built keeps evolving. She has outlasted the formats that first made her famous, the scandals that were supposed to define her, and the industry's repeated, quiet certainty that her moment had passed. The image and the person have never been perfectly aligned. She has said as much herself. But what makes Oprah Winfrey genuinely worth studying is not the gap between them. Every public figure has that gap. It is how deliberately, how intelligently, and how painfully she has managed it. She chose what to reveal and when. She chose what to protect. She built an empire in the space between her public warmth and her private discipline. And she has spent 50 years deciding every day which side of that line to stand on. The image is still there, on screens and magazine covers and in cultural shorthand. And somewhere behind it, the woman who could read at 3, who ran away at 13, who cried at stories when the industry told her not to, who owned her own studio before she was 35, who endorsed the candidate and lost the viewers, and did it anyway. That woman is still working, still becoming. The show ended. The story hasn't.